Picture a battlefield where the horizon disappears. Two massive armies, millions of soldiers, facing each other beneath a sky choked with dust. Before a single weapon is drawn, both sides agree to a specific ethical framework. This is a Dharma Yudh, a righteous war, governed by clear, civilized boundaries. This diagram illustrates the three core rules established on day one. First, warriors fight only their equals. Second, no one attacks an unarmed or fleeing soldier. And third, all combat strictly stops the moment the sun sets. Even with these boundaries, stepping onto the battlefield forces a crisis of conscience. Arjuna freezes when he sees his own relatives and teachers across the front line. It takes the guidance of his charioteer, Krishna, to clarify his duty, convincing Arjuna and the Pandavas that their cause is purely moral. But that raises a difficult question. When human survival and deep-seated egos are on the line, is absolute morality actually sustainable through 18 days of bloodshed, or are the rules of war an illusion waiting to break? For the first 10 days, under the command of the Kaurava patriarch Bhishma, the violence is devastating. Yet the foundational rules of combat largely hold firm. Both sides return to their camps at nightfall, leaving the fight on the battlefield. Then comes the first major moral compromise. Knowing Commander Bhishma has vowed never to strike a female-born warrior, the Pandavas place Shikhandi directly in front of Arjuna, using him as a human shield to paralyze the commander and take him down. The narrative shifts sharply on day 13. The new Kaurava commander, Drona, deploys the Chakravyuha, an incredibly complex, multi-tiered military labyrinth designed to trap and crush the enemy. This top-down strategic view of the Chakravyuha shows how the rule of equal combat is completely discarded. Arjuna's young son, Abhimanyu, breaches the formation but gets trapped inside. Suddenly, multiple veteran Kaurava warriors swarm the unarmed youth, slaughtering him together. Arjuna responds with a singular vow to kill the warrior responsible, Jayadatha, before the next sunset. To ensure this succeeds, Krishna uses a divine manipulation to briefly mask the sun, tricking Jayadatha into lowering his guard for the fatal strike. With Abhimanyu dead, the warriors stop looking for honor. From here on, the war is driven by a singular urge, vengeance. By day 15, Commander Drona is tearing through the Pandava ranks. He is invincible in direct combat, leaving the Pandavas desperate enough to target his only psychological weakness, his deep love for his son, Ashwathama. They orchestrate a calculated deception. Yudhishthira, a king known as the embodiment of absolute truth, loudly announces that Ashwathama is dead. He whispers that it is an elephant by that name, but the nuance is deliberately drowned out by war horns. Looking back at our rules of engagement diagram, we see the consequences. Believing his son is dead, Drona drops his weapons and sits in meditation, where he is immediately beheaded, shattering the core rule of protecting the unarmed. The tension peaks on day 17, during the duel between the war's two greatest archers, Arjuna and Karna. The combat comes to a sudden halt when Karna's heavy chariot wheel sinks deeply into the wet earth, completely immobilized. Karna steps down. He pleads for a temporary ceasefire so he can free his wheel, explicitly invoking the ancient, agreed-upon rules of war. Krishna intervenes. He reminds Arjuna of how those same rules were ignored when Abhimanyu was trapped in the labyrinth. Driven by that memory, Arjuna draws his bow and executes the unarmed Karna. By the end of day 17, the structured conflict has dissolved into a transactional, ruthless fight for raw survival. The final physical combat takes place on day 18 between Bhima and Duryodhana. In a duel with heavy maces, Bhima deliberately strikes Duryodhana below the waist, shattering his thighs and breaking the final sacred rule of mace fighting. The Kaurava survivors retaliate with horrific cruelty. In the dead of night, Ashwathama launches a stuzzathwaite on the Pandava camp, slaughtering sleeping children and unarmed men directly in their beds. The escalation peaks when both sides summon Brahmastras, apocalyptic divine weapons capable of destroying all of creation, before sages intervene to narrowly diffuse the blast. When the sun finally sets on the war, Kurukshetra is a silent landscape covered in millions of corpses. The Pandavas secure the throne, but have lost their children, their mentors, and their moral innocence. These 18 days at Kurukshetra show that when revenge becomes the only objective, the rules of war disappear, leaving behind a throne built on the bodies of the next generation.